Hi guys, thanks for joining me in this video lesson. In this video, I'm going to talk about cultural communication style. It might not be what you expect in a listening course, but that's why this class is special. I'm going to give you a tip that goes beyond just my video lessons about the sounds of English for improving your listening skills. This video is going to improve the way that you predict and understand what you hear. In different cultures, we have different communication styles. So when we speak in different ways. I'm going to outline some major differences if we can simply divide cultures into two different contexts, high context and low context. This theory explains that we have a division. We have two different kinds of communication styles in the world, which is really overly simplified, but at least it gives us somewhere to start. So high context cultures are typically, for example, in Asia, and low context cultures would be more North American style. So if you are used to a high context culture, you're going to have to begin to anticipate and to get used to understanding a different kind of communication. This will actually help your listening a lot. For example, I went to Japan to work, and I asked my supervisor once if I would be able to play volleyball with the volleyball club, with the students. I was an English teacher in a high school at the time. And she said, well, that would be very difficult. So I understood her words, that would be difficult, or that's difficult, but I didn't comprehend the meaning. So my listening skills were okay. I mean, she was speaking English, so of course I could understand her English. However, the meaning went right over my head. I did not understand that she actually meant to say, no, it would not be possible. No, it's not acceptable for you to practice with the volleyball group. So in this case, this is an example of indirect versus direct communication. The last item on the list here. So in some cultures, you might communicate more indirectly, and you expect your listener to understand what you're saying intuitively. Maybe a Japanese person or someone a little bit more intuitive than me at the time would have understood that that's difficult actually means no. But coming from North American communication culture, I expect that no means no. So as a listener, I want you to predict that North Americans, or perhaps people from the UK, from Australia, and other English-speaking countries, will have the kind of culture where they speak directly what they think, feel, and if they have an opinion or an answer to give you, it will be quite direct. It may feel like it's too direct or too harsh, but this is normal for us. Let's take a look at some of the other points that can be different between the different ways that we communicate based on our cultural background. In a high context culture, there's more emphasis placed on the group and teamwork, versus in the US, we place a lot of importance on being independent and doing tasks on your own. So let's say you're in a conversation with a colleague or perhaps your supervisor. That person might be giving you directions that you need to listen to and understand, with the assumption that you're doing this task alone, by yourself, independently. Next, ongoing help versus one-time or kind of as-needed help. So as we place a lot of emphasis and a lot of importance on being independent and taking action on your own, you might find that that is a little different from your cultural background, expecting to work together as a team and in placing the importance on how everyone is doing. Oftentimes, if you have, let's say, a group of 10 people who are working on a project together, you won't move forward until everyone has completed their task. However, this is different from in the US, where we keep moving forward as fast as possible, sometimes leaving the slower person behind. Now, I'm not saying that one way is better or worse than the other, but there's certainly different ways of taking action and of communicating. Okay, here we rely on culture in the high context situations, but in the US we really rely on the message. So what I mean is, in the US, look, we have a lot of different cultures. We don't only have Americans here, and even Americans are not the first or the only people in the US, right? We're not all Native Americans, and we're certainly not all from the US. Many people who are now calling themselves Americans, rightly so, they were born in different countries, or vice versa. We have Americans who will say, well, I'm Irish or I'm Italian because their grandparents are. My point is, we have a great cultural diversity. And so we rely on the message, the literal words, more than the culture. Because in a place where we have such a melting pot or such a diversity of cultural backgrounds, we cannot assume that everyone is on the same page or has the same cultural background. Okay, there's exceptions to this. Maybe you're from a small town and everyone is American, then you have a shared cultural context. But if you're living in a big city where it's very international and you have people from all different backgrounds, you really cannot assume that you all have the same understanding. And that's why, in my opinion, that's why in the US we rely on direct messages. So we say what we mean and we mean what we say. There's a phrase that says, you can take my words to the bank. And that means that I'm saying something that is concrete. You can take it to the bank, meaning my words are good. They are what I mean. I'm not trying to hide my meaning behind a more indirect message that relies on cultural clues, okay? This is a little different than relying on situational clues. You know, for example, if you are working in an office and you have an office culture, you might learn that there are certain ways of communication or doing things that you don't need to explain directly, okay, because you have a shared culture there. So again, this is a bit of a generalization, but I hope that these points will help you to understand more when you're listening to English. Okay, here we have relationships versus equality. So in other cultures, oftentimes relationships and hierarchy, right? Who has a higher position or a lower position is very important, and what you say or what you hear can be interpreted based on the person's position, right? Now in the US, that's not always true. We believe more in equality, and you might approach someone who is higher than you in a ranking or lower than you, and you might communicate in a very similar way. You know, we don't have different verb forms or a huge difference between the way we would address someone respectfully who is above us or below us. Respect is respect. Okay, here, nonverbal versus more verbal. So other cultures tend to rely more on nonverbal communication, such as perhaps your body gestures, your body language, your gestures, or your facial expressions. Now these are important, of course, in North America as well, but again, the bottom line is we tend to rely more strongly on just saying directly what we mean. So when you listen to English and you hear a direct message, you can understand that the words are the meaning, and you don't have to guess what is between the lines or what is the hidden meaning, because most of the time we're going to say our opinion directly. Okay, we're going to be saying what we feel and what we mean and what we want simply in words. And this might seems so simple or so direct if you're from a different cultural background. But remember that for us from North America, we have, some ideas about the high context culture that could be kind of negative as well. Like, wow, it's so difficult to understand your true feelings or your true opinion, or making a decision is very difficult, right? So we really appreciate making decisions quickly, and we really appreciate giving a direct opinion. So if you're coming from a high context culture, you might want to try developing your communication skills to be more direct so that your North American partners will understand your true meaning, right? Because we're used to a very direct method of communication. So I hope that you understand how this relates with your listening skills and that you've enjoyed this video lesson. Thanks, guys.